Happy April Fools! Happy April Fool's Day. Just kidding, you'll be watching this after April Fools, but it's April Fool's Day for me. I feel like little holidays like this and St. Patrick's Day meant so much more when you're in school as a kid. And this is my first book video long form on the channel, so we're just gonna dive right into it. For the month of March, we had 7 books completed. One of them was nonfiction, which is one of my New Year's resolutions, to try to get a nonfiction per month, and the rest are kind of all over the place. Disclaimer: if you are an audiobook hater or someone who doesn't think audiobooks count, you will not like my take. But I was you once upon a time until I had a child, and once that child started moving, I no longer had time to sit and read with my eyeballs, which I do prefer. So now I take care of a kid and a household while I have books in my ears. And I love it because it keeps me able to read stories and learn, escape reality for a little bit. And I'm able to keep up with all the books and authors that I love, as well as enjoy content on YouTube about books. So happy to partake. And even if it's just audiobooks at this stage of life, I've come to love it. First up, at the beginning of the month, I had a single day that I read Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun. This is the 3rd book in the Finley Donovan series, and I had seen it before and never thought it was too interesting. I don't know if I ever even read the synopsis, but basically in the first book, we have an author who is struggling. She is newly divorced, raising 2 kids, and her husband's kind of a jerk, marrying their realtor. So she's in this tight spot where she's not really having money coming in. Her books are not quite as successful as they need to be, and that might be putting it nicely. So her husband's fighting for custody of the kids because he can afford the house she's living in and the services, and she's just trying to stay afloat. Long story short, she's having a conversation with her agent in a Panera, and somebody mistakes her conversation about her mystery thriller novel she's writing as a clue that she would be a hitman. And suddenly she is accidentally hired to take out this lady's husband. I think most of that was in the back of the book, but the rest of the series follows kind of the tangled web that ends up involving her in, and it's so funny. I feel like I was actually really stressed out because of the whole relationship dynamic at the beginning, but it ends up being just such a kind of lighthearted, of course you would end up in this situation, over and over throughout the series, but I feel like it doesn't get redundant. And there's always new aspects added. There's a little bit of romance subplot in each of the books and keeps it interesting. And it's just so funny watching how, let's just say, her real life experiences play very well into her author experiences, and she has a lot of success thanks to her lived experience in the whole murder mystery crime genre. Overall, I gave that a 3-star rating. I love the series. So the series has been, the book 1 was a 5-star, book 2 was 3 stars, and then book 3 was also 3 stars. I gave the novella 4 stars though. So I feel like it's a solid series where I know I'm going to enjoy reading it. They just aren't always the books that are going to stick with me. I don't remember what the 3rd book was about, aside from it being a continuation of the other ones. I get them a little confused, and that's probably why they're 3-star ratings for me. Next, after Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun, we had the book that everyone on BookTube has been talking about lately, Just Friends by Pham. I've been watching Pham since she was in high school and I was in high school, and she was posting videos about making straight A's. I had kind of halfway through high school quit reading accidentally, but whenever I saw her start posting book content, I read Beach Read, and that opened up the world of reading to me again. So low-key, she kind of plays a big part in my whole reading journey as an adult, and finding out that she was writing a book was exciting. I know there's a lot of controversy on the book deal that she got, but honestly, she's put a decade and more into her channel to get that platform she has, and so she's worked hard for what she has. And overall, I gave Just Friends a 3-star rating. I think you've probably heard a lot of different things about it if you are not new to BookTube. I feel like it was a lot of just friends, as the title says, and the romance was sweet and innocent, and I didn't feel very connected to it. But the setting was beautiful, and the idea, like the concept was beautiful. It just felt a little bit like a young adult book. I don't know if it's technically considered a young adult book, but it was a quick read and it felt like it dealt with a lot of hard personal things. It just didn't dive into the romance very much. But I also know that's kind of how she tends to enjoy reading, is the books that are literary fiction, contemporary fiction with romance. So I can see that playing in. It just wasn't the cute summary romance that I went into it thinking it would be. So, like I said, 3 stars. I would read more books by her. Okay, next up was the nonfiction book I read. I actually plowed through this after watching somebody on YouTube talking about their process after being laid off to becoming a full-time content creator. And she just talked about this book called We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. Sorry, I'm looking down at my Goodreads. And the thing that got my attention in the video I was watching initially, she's trying to make $10,000 in 10 days. And apparently that's a challenge from this book. And I was like, girl, that is impossible. And she's like, yeah, no, actually, like, people do it. The book kind of lays it out. And I will say it was the most inspiring, like, financial self-help book. I guess I haven't read that many, but it felt like it could make me do something, you know? And so I read it through in 3 days, reread parts. It kept me up at night. And let's just say that's the reason that I am now more motivated than ever to be reselling on Depop and kind of diving back into that full force, as well as posting on the internet. So I think if things pan out the way I hope they do, I can give a lot of credit to this book for giving me just the motivation to ask for the help I need to get stuff done, to take certain things off my plate in order that I can bring new things in and spend more time on the things that matter, like relationships and the passions that I want to make money from. I would recommend, if you're a woman who, honestly, if you're in a position where you need to make more money to survive, I think that book will make it fun and make it feel attainable. And if you just want to make more money, then yeah, that's a good take. I wouldn't say I agree with all of it, but money is not a priority for me and I don't think it should be. And so that's kind of just, I'm not going to sacrifice certain things in my life in order to make money and in order to have the comfort and luxury. And one of the interesting things that definitely got me thinking was her talking about how much more of an impact you can have and like donating money when you are rich. Her argument in the book is that if you charge more and you're able to build an empire, you can make a whole lot more of a difference for the low-income families that you're trying to serve with your services. If you were serving high-income families, making money and donating to programs that help with the livelihood of the low-income families. It's true in some ways, and I think it's also not something I would find as satisfying as a person who thrives on human-to-human connection. So, little tangent there. I would recommend it as a solid read, very inspiring, and it'll get you thinking at the very least. Next up, we have the novella from the Finley Donovan series, and it is Veronica Ruiz Breaks the Bank. I gave this 4 stars. It was a good backstory. If you're already into the series, you know who Veronica Ruiz is, probably. And so getting her little backstory was good. And it's just a quick little read, little novella. Next up, this is a series that I saw a lot of recommendations for on booktok, and people trying to experience the feeling of Fourth Wing, which I hate to be stereotypical, but y'all, that is like, I think it's my favorite series of all time. I was obsessed with dragons and thought I had invisible pet dragons growing up. And I was also obsessed with Dauntless faction of Divergent. And as I grew out of my dragon phase, I grew into my Dauntless phase and would like go convince my siblings to jump off roofs and stuff. So they're mixing the dragons with the Divergent Dauntless kind of idea. Absolute crack for me. I love the series, and I was looking for anything to fill that hole in my heart when I finished the 3 books that are out so far. And I came across recommendations for the series by Raven Kennedy. The first book is called Guild. I should have looked more into it before reading it, and that's on me. I have the rest of the series on hold on Libby, and they're about to start coming up. And I haven't decided if I'm going to continue because I was not aware. I don't know if it's not mentioned in the synopsis that the main character we're following is a royal saddle, or I don't know what you call it, a concubine, sex worker for a king. The opening scene was pretty explicit, and I was sitting there on a road trip with my parents. Like, oh my goodness. And I kind of had to turn it off. Could not do that. But I do think that there's interesting, like, it's a retelling of the King Midas Gold Touch story. And I think that's a really interesting take. There were some factors that I found really exciting, and I can see how it is, an exciting fantasy for people to read. I just think there's a lot of the first scene, but then there's also like essay and other trigger warnings, just really kind of gruesome. Yeah, there's been violence too, but that doesn't bother me as much in books. It's more so just the sexual, non-consensual kind of situation. So I gave it 2 stars because I see the potential in the world, and I just don't love the lens it's given through or the detail it's given with and the turns it takes sometimes. I might do some looking into the upcoming books to see if they have the same trigger warnings before I continue the series, because I am curious about the whole kingdom setup and the politics and war setup of everything. I cannot recommend it at this point, or you just really have to know what you're getting into. I don't know. Next up, we had back-to-back 5-star reads to finish out the month. We had The Women by Kristen Hanna, and this was my first Kristen Hanna book, so I was pumped. I have heard all the hype. They've been recommended to me over and over, but they're big fat books, and honestly, I wanted the satisfaction of holding them in my hand as I read them. But I've been putting it off for almost 2 years now. In this book, she writes about 1965. We have a 20-something-year-old girl named Frankie who has her nursing degree, and she is ready to get into the career world. However, her brother just got out of Navy school, and he is shipping off to Vietnam. Her family throws a big party. They're a wealthy family out in Coronado Island in California, and her dad holds like military service in the highest regards, respects. He has a wall in his office called the Heroes Wall, where every family member who's ever been to war is showcased on there. And the women are only showcased when they get married in the wedding photos. So he himself wasn't able to go to war because of, I think it was health reasons, but everyone else in the family, like, all he talks about with that respect is serving in the military. So when her brother goes off to war, she decides serving as a nurse in the war would be more fulfilling and a way to receive appreciation from her family. And so she enlists in the army, and they're the only ones who don't need her to have several years of experience in order to go overseas. She ends up going, and as you can imagine, it's a brutal experience. I don't know a lot of the historical context from the Vietnam War until I feel like reading this book really opened my eyes. There's another book I read called The Last Assignment, and it was about a photographer, so I ate that book up, but she was a wartime photographer, and I didn't know it was like a biography. So I learned a lot from that book a few months ago, and then following this fictional story with a lot of real details was so interesting. Honestly, like, we got to the end of the war, and I was feeling all the feelings. She comes home, and I thought the book was over. And then I noticed that I was only 48% of the way through, and I was like, what the heck? I feel like I've lived a whole story at this point. What do you mean there's still 50% of the book left? But the 5 stars don't lie. The second half was just as good as the first, and I feel like, honestly, the story of coming home from war and life afterwards was just as important as the story of war itself. And so I really admire the way Kristen Hanna writes, and I can't wait to get into more of her books soon. And finally, the last book, it's not the last book I read, but it is the last book I finished, because I have a few that I'm in the middle of. And this was, I think, recommended on Faith Osler's Faith's Reading Things YouTube channel. I looked it up and immediately put it on hold in Libby. It is called The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, and it's the first book in the series. I don't think the second book's out yet, but it should be coming out soon? ? This book is about a girl who lives in a society where it's kind of like Bridgerton-esque. They come out into society as debutantes to find their matches. She grew up as the younger sister to a girl who was the perfect daughter and was guaranteed to get a great match. And she had this deal with her sister that her sister would marry this guy and she could come live with her and never have to worry about getting married, never have to worry about being a proper lady in society. Ivy is coming out into society. It is announced that the Fae Prince is going to be taking a wife. However, in order to be eligible to be his wife, you have to eliminate yourself from the whole rest of the dating pool. And There's 20 something girls who sign up, and then it's narrowed down, and it's basically like The Bachelor combined with a little bit of, I feel like the series is going in a bit of ACOTAR kind of direction. I read We Were Monsters, or When We Were Monsters, by Jennifer Niven earlier this year or last year, and the kind of living, like students living in a cottage with a supervisor and like questionable things going on, it gave a little bit of those same vibes. However, combined with The Bachelor and combined with Bridgerton, I believe it's also been compared to like the Selection series. I've never read that, so maybe you would have a little bit more of an idea of what this series is like. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think all the twists and turns were phenomenal. I think the drama and the relationships between the girls and watching it unfold, everyone's reasons for having taken the bargain. Oh my gosh, I still haven't mentioned the actual bargain thing. Okay, well, everyone's reasons for taking the bet where they have to eliminate themselves from the whole dating field and never take a husband. It's so interesting and so much more complex than the surface level, like, oh, I want to be a princess. So I highly recommend going into it and learning more about that yourself. But again, back to the rose bargain side of things. The queen can grant everybody a wish, but it's not just a wish that's granted. It is a bargain. So they have to give up something for whatever they ask. Ivy Benton's mom, for example, asked to remember everything. She thought that would give her the ability to woo a man by remembering every little detail. And she gave up her pinky in order to have a perfect memory. You know, there's some downsides to that that you don't always think about. A lot of the girls in the debutante season ask for perfect hair, shiny hair, straight teeth, you know, beautiful face, extra few inches tall, or stuff like that. And it's just interesting, like the little things that the queen takes from them in order to give them these things. You can choose whenever to make your bargain once you're 18, but once you make it, there's no going back, and you live with the consequences for the rest of their life, even if they are not what you think they would be. And sometimes people's gifts end up being a curse. Not so much the sacrifice themselves, but what they asked for ends up being a curse. So, super cool book. Felt pretty original to me, just involving, you know, concepts that I've loved from other books and series and shows. So that is my March reading wrap up. I wish I had physical books to show you guys, but like I said, I'm an all audiobook girly right now. I am in the middle of a few physical books though, so hopefully when it comes time for the April reading wrap up, I will have at least one, maybe two books to hold in a picture, but you guys can enjoy just like the little screenshots of the covers of the books that I read this month in the meantime. I hope you all have a fabulous upcoming April, and you find some good stories to read and worlds to immerse yourself in.